Good morning. Today, we're going to read from famous American folktales. This is a chapter book with a lot of different folktales. We're going to read about Paul Bunyan. Paul Bunyan was not a real person, but they think that the stories about Paul Bunyan were modeled after a French lumberjack, somebody who really did exist, but his name was not Paul Bunyan. Take a listen, see what parts of this story may have been exaggerated, a tall tale. This story is called Paul Bunyan's Worst Winter. Paul Bunyan was the greatest lumberjack. Born in Bemidji, Minnesota, Paul grew big fast. At 1 week old, his mother clothed him in his father's overalls. Does that sound right? Paul wouldn't fit any ordinary stroller, so his parents cradled him in a lumber wagon. Oxen pulled his giant baby carriage. At a year old, everyone in town gathered to fashion the clothes he needed. His trouser buttons were wooden wagon wheels. Soon, Paul grew too big for Bemidji. He waved goodbye to his folks and set out into the wide wilderness. So take a look at what his parents look like and take a look at Paul. Does that make sense? Is that part of the tall tale? Maybe he really was a tall guy. But look at how this story grew. Those woods had frigid winters, very, very cold. During one blizzard, it became so cold the snow turned blue. Paul rescued a baby ox frozen in a snowdrift. He had turned blue too and stayed blue. Paul named him Babe. Like Paul, Babe grew huge. There's Paul and Babe and then a regular person. It down there. Like Paul, Babe grew huge, and soon the distance between his eyes measured 7 axe handles. Babe ate 40 bales of hay as a snack. Paul's logging camp used a gigantic wagon with a water tank on it to ice the roads so they could slide lumber on sleighs to the river. Only Babe could pull such an enormous wagon. Once the tanker spilled and the flood formed Lake Itasca near Bemidji, what the lake couldn't contain streamed south as the mighty Mississippi. Babe preferred winter work, and come summertime, he refused to pull. So Paul tricked the ox by whitewashing the roads. Together, Paul and Babe performed astounding feats. As loggers, none could match them. By swinging his massive axe around on a rope, Paul became a whirling buzzsaw, felling acres of timber in a tornado of sawdust. Can you imagine swinging the axe around his head and getting all the trees? It's crazy, right? As fast as Paul cut, Babe hauled another load of logs away. Calling to his lumberjacks, laughing heartily, Paul's voice thundered in the valleys. The men protected their eardrums with earmuffs. There's Paul with a regular person. One year, Paul decided to camp in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. By December, the weather had turned so cold that when the cook poured boiling coffee, it froze hot enough to burn their tongues. The snow fell so deep, Paul dug down to the level of the trees to cut them. The fish started going south. To keep the river stocked, Paul mixed the fish with bobcats, and they sprouted warm fur. Fishermen and trappers fight over these fish, as a whole coat can be made from one pelt. Inspired by the fish, the lumberjacks grew their beards. They tripped over their hair and had to tuck their beards in their boots. One evening in January, the temperature dropped off the bottom of the thermometer. At bedtime, the lumberjacks discovered the flames in the lanterns had frozen. Not even Paul Bunyan could extinguish them. Sleepless from the solid flames blazing, the lumberjacks hid the lanterns in the forest. By February, even Paul Bunyan couldn't go outside. The sound of the loggers' words froze as they huddled together waiting for spring. The words thawed first. The lumberjacks' chatter echoed for a week. Then the lanterns in the woods defrosted and ignited a forest fire. Fortunately, Paul Bunyan stomped out the flames. As Michigan melted, Paul lined up his loggers and trimmed their wild beards with a scythe. The dense hair made excellent rope for the next year of logging. And that's the end. So what does not sound like it could possibly be true in that? Almost all of it, right? Probably the grain of truth in this story was there was a really big, tall lumberjack who did a lot of work. And the stories spun from there. But boy, it probably was fun for people to tell these stories before we had TV, before we had all sorts of entertainment. This is how people entertained themselves. They would tell stories to their children or their families, and then they would tell the same stories. It brought people together. Hey, I heard the story of Paul Bunyan. Oh, wow, did you hear this one? It was entertainment, my friends. I hope you enjoyed the story of Paul Bunyan. Have a wonderful day. Oh, I almost forgot. A challenge for today. Today's challenge is to make a pen for Paul Bunyan's blue ox. So you can make it out of Legos. You can make it out of blocks. You can make it out of popsicle sticks. You decide. But a pen, like a fenced-in area to keep his blue ox. And if you want to draw the blue ox and put it in the pen, that would be great too. Send me a picture if you do it. This is optional. This is for you if you want to do it. It's just, hey, I'm looking for something to do. Here's a challenge for you. If you don't do it, that's fine too. I hope you like the story. Have a great day.